this webinar. This webinar is about technology hacks that make workforce management easier. So let's get started. As most of you know, I am the CEO of the Aged Care Development Network. We work with, we're a workforce accreditation services provider for the aged community and disability sectors, as well as we run an actual membership body for the workers in those sectors. So there's two very distinct sides to our house. And on the worker side, our aim is to support them in career, education, and member awards. Anyway, in my role, I have the opportunity to work with and within a large variety of aged and community care providers, small, medium, and large, public, private, and non-profit. As I get around the sector, I'm always collecting the different hacks that managers are using to help them simplify the work involved in workforce management. Now, at the same time, this is one topic that I'm constantly get asked about by managers. I guess because technology moves so quickly, no one person can stay on top of everything. There are always new apps and new services being released. So if you're on this webinar, I would guess that you have an interest in technology hacks and how they can support you in your role. That's the big picture. What I'd really like from you is the little picture. What are your headaches? What are you trying to solve at your place? If you can list them in the chat room below, where you gave me the loud and clear ratings for hearing, anything that you look to achieve today, or what are some of the headaches that you've got, I'll then make sure that I address those during the presentation. So I'm tired of double entering data. I can relate that. Thanks, Kristen. I want to see what I can automate. Yes. Model systems which don't speak to each other. Yes, very common. How do I help with so many flood of CVs? Yes. Okay, yep. There are a number of things that we're going to answer today or address today. And if I don't answer them fully, come and talk to me at the end and we'll see what we can do there. Thank you very much. So you got some ideas of what you're looking for today. Right. I'd like to give you an overview of what we're going to go through today over the next 30 minutes or so. This webinar will focus on a series of hacks, all with the aim of saving time, lowering cost, and lowering risk. Online rostering, what is the best program? Just looking after. Yep, totally. So these are not all the hacks that we know and teach, but in 30 to 40 minutes, I don't have time to go through them all today. So today I'll focus on the most common hacks that we use. Afterwards, I'll show you how you can find more resources, information, and assistance if you need it on this topic. And just, I value your time, and I hope that you value my time. So I have a gift that I'll announce at the end for everyone who stays with me until the end of the webinar. It's one of the most sought after items in my collection. We get phone calls from strangers trying to get this gift. So stick around. I'll make getting everyone a piece of that. Now, I've come from a different background in this place, and so I always get asked, why am I doing it? And I'm always curious as to why everyone else does. So before we begin, I know generally why you are here, but I doubt that many of you know why I am here. I'm not an RN by background or come from a social work background like many of the people in aged care. I've had an unusual path to my current role leading the Aged Care Development Network, ACDN. I enjoy building and leading teams and have done so in a number of industries and in different countries. I lived in Japan on and off for 10 years and I speak fluent Japanese. I've served in 2 armies. This is where the team building comes in. I served briefly in the French Foreign Legion in France, after which I returned to Australia and went to the Royal Military College, Duntroon, to become an Australian Army officer. So I formally studied HR, as well as learned through building teams and those above experiences. But why focus on aged care? In 2009, my nana passed away, my mum's mum. I live in Melbourne, my parents live in Newcastle, and my nana lived near my aunt and uncle in Brisbane. Both my mum and aunt are RNs. My parents were overseas in the middle of a 4-week trip through Egypt, Turkey, Jordan, and Israel when my aunt called me one night. My aunt had been visiting Nana that day and had noticed a strange-looking bruise on her arm. She took her out of the aged care home she'd lived in for the past few years, over to the Wesley Hospital where my aunt worked. They quickly ran some tests and discovered that Nana had an advanced stage of leukemia with just days to live. My aunt called the home, and they quickly moved Nana's things from her current room down to the palliative care wing, setting up as closely as possible to her old room, so she felt comfortable there. My aunt returned with Nana and settled into the new room, and that's when she called me. Even though I don't live near my parents, when you receive a phone call like this, you want to feel close to them. So the fact that they were in the Middle East meant that they felt very far away from me. On top of feeling lonely, I felt helpless, I guess, in not being able to do anything for my nana. So at 10 p.m. that night, I called the nursing home in Brisbane, and this is why I took on this role in ACDN, helping those wonderful people who work in the aged care sector. A slightly cold, authoritative voice came down the phone, and I opened with, "My name is Michael Moe, and I'm Joy O'Neill's grandson. I was hoping to speak to someone about how she is." The voice immediately shifted gears, and this new voice, full of compassion, came back down the line to me. "Hello, Michael. My name's Sarah, and I'm looking after your grandmother. We've bathed her, and she's wearing a favourite nightie. We've done her hair and tried to make her as happy as we can. Every hour we change her position in the bed so she isn't too long on one side. We're doing everything in our power to make her comfortable. And whenever you need to speak to us, Michael, you just give us a call." I didn't need to know her medical condition. What I needed to hear was that when I was far away and couldn't help her, someone was helping my grandmother. That's all that mattered to me. And that's why I do what I do. So, moving right along. As I get around, I see constantly that the management role in our sector is getting tighter and tighter. Less time, reduced budgets, and frequently less staff, especially senior staff, than before. We all need to work smarter, but not necessarily harder. Successful workforce management is a mix of 3 things: people, processes, and technology. At the start of everything, without the right people in the right roles, you're not starting off on a good foot. But if the processes are bad, the governance aspects of workforce management, even the best workers will struggle. And finally, the way to leverage a good setup is proper use of technology. That's how they all come together. Now, there are a wide variety of solutions to the challenges that fall under workforce management. Some are good, some are bad, and some of the really nice ones are just not in the budget for most providers. At ACDN, we've started building a marketplace of service providers, both online and offline. We especially do our best in bringing affordable technology services into the market so that you can leverage them. Many of these providers will solve common challenges and can easily be set up without an internal IT department. So we're going to look at 3 third-party services that we frequently pull in when we are working with a provider. And we're going to talk about a 4th service from our own lineup that makes the first 3 even more powerful. We leverage those first 3. Each of the services I discussed today, I can make introductions for you if you want to investigate how they can support you in your role. I shall go through that process at the end of the webinar. Before I jump into the different services, I just want to touch on functionality versus connectivity. Some of you might have seen this as a blog post on my LinkedIn profile recently. Good example is Apple. When the iPhone was first launched in 2007, its functionality was light years ahead of the competition. The average Nokia did not have a hope. The iPhone's functionality meant it operated on a completely different level. Skip ahead to the iPhone 7 in 2006, and the jumps in functionality over its rivals are becoming less obvious. They don't have the same wow factor as years gone by. Instead, what makes the iPhone so powerful now is how the phone's functionality works within the entire Apple ecosystem. So many apps sharing information. The difference is no longer about functionality, it's about connectivity. Technology in our sector is no different. There are always improvements in functionality available because technology moves so quickly. But the real question you should ask yourself is about connectivity. Do my technology platforms share information? Can I automate common HR tasks? Can I easily pull data from multiple platforms to get a clear picture of the business? Throughout this webinar, I'd like you to keep those questions in your head. You might have a service such as police checks, but do they connect automatically to your HR platform, for example? Functionality is important, but in 2017, connectivity is the real game changer. Now, let's get started, and let's start with recruitment. Typical scenario in recruitment. You're hiring 8 carers. Ideally, you don't need so many at once, but when you just needed to replace 3 of them, you were busy, so advertising for staff at that time. Then a few more left, which became 5 carers. So you finally put an advertisement on Seek or Career One, and you need 8. From that advertisement, you get 60 applications through the door, which you either manually or with an applicant tracking system have to review. You make the best decision possible based on the experience and education shown in the CV. You invite 15 applicants to come in for an interview. You and one other manager each interview each applicant for an hour, finally choosing the best 8 on your gut feeling for the culture of your site. If any of them don't work out through their decision or yours, you're back to repeating the same process to make up the number of applicants you need. Recruitment can be time consuming, and that time is a real cost. Most managers I speak to who have done the sums say they spend between $1,400 and $2,000 per recruit at a carer level. And that does not include psychometric testing or the initial mandatory training they require and buddying. So that's only the hiring. Time to usefulness is even longer. So hack number 1 is a provider called Newly. They're a recruitment company purely for carers, but they go way beyond anything I've ever seen in the marketplace. They have a database of over 10,000 carers across Greater Melbourne, plus other areas in New South Wales, Queensland, and South Australia. You give them the parameters of the people you wish to recruit, your wish list, such as qualifications, minimum years of experience, languages spoken, living within 20 minutes, 30 minutes of your workplace, etc. Newly will then search for, test, and supply the best people they can find that meet your parameters. And if someone does not work out for you, Newly will place them at no extra cost. All for $700 per carer. Personally, I believe that Newly's recruitment system is more robust than many of the providers that I've worked with. But to me, that's the aim. They are subject matter experts in recruiting carers. You're a subject matter expert in managing an aged or community care business. It's a different skill set. So to get in Newly's database is not easy. Carers must complete an online form, which means they have some level of technology skills. Yes, I know that they could have gotten a family member to do it, but it certainly increases the odds of them having some IT literacy. That is followed by a 5-minute phone interview with a Newly staff member. So they get an immediate sense of their English language skills and general communication skills. And all of this is listed into their file. Then when a carer matches the parameters for recruitment by a provider, they called in by Newly for a series of interviews and tests. This includes a one-on-one face-to-face interview, psychometric testing, and then they go into group activity tests to test their communication skills and their leadership ability. All of which then gives newly the information they need to know if this person would fit the brief, what the provider requested. Over 90% of Newly's clients, and I work with some of them, do not meet the carer before they come in on their first shift, on their first day. They trust Newly's service to the extent that they use Newly as their outsourced recruitment department. That's why Newly's growing quickly and we keep hearing good reports about them. So ask yourself how they could assist you. Are there any questions on Newly? If you have anything, you can put it into the chat right now. Nothing coming up, no worries. So we'll move ahead. Let's look at mandatory training. There are a whole raft of challenges in mandatory training these days. Firstly, it's not clearly defined anywhere, not in the Act, the standards or principles as to what subjects are mandatory under mandatory training. Among our panel of advisors at ACN are agency auditors, so we've gone through this area with a fine-tooth comb because it becomes a debate a lot. Most providers have between 8 to 10 subjects that they call mandatory training. They usually all include the big four: manual handling, fire and emergency, infection control, and elder abuse, as they are the four of the biggest risks faced by a provider each day. But I repeat, they are not actually listed by name anywhere as being mandatory. Also, on things that are missing in the Act, standards and principles around mandatory training is nowhere that it says a provider must deliver these subjects, nor do you need to own the result that someone did the subject. Your obligation is to make sure that your staff all have access to the training required to complete their role. That's it. So we'll come back to that a bit later. Providers usually take the initial 4 and then add in another 4 to 6 to make it generally 8 to 10 mandatory training subjects they want their staff to complete each year. There are common subjects, as well as growth in newer subjects like customer service and dementia. The next challenge in mandatory is around the content in the subject. They're not accredited subjects like a Certificate 3 in aged care, which meets the EQTF, Australian Qualifications and Training Framework. So there are both good and bad subject content being delivered both face-to-face and in online training. It all depends on the company or the instructor. Probably the next biggest challenge is keeping the content fresh and relevant. Making your staff sit through the same subject content year in and year out is not ideal. Many staff will switch off and so the training is wasted. So it becomes purely a box ticking exercise. On top of which, some of the subjects really have so many aspects, you really could teach 4 or 5 different versions of them. For example, infection control, and deliver a different one each year on a 4 or 5 year rotation. But those kind of things can take a lot of time and planning to set up. Staff's attitude is then frequently dictated by how well they've done a subject that year. We all know that the majority of staff work for more than one provider at any one time. So if each provider makes them sit down and do the same subject, especially if the same consultant is delivering the subject, and I've seen this time and time again, they tune out. So you spend time and money on them for no return. Finally, the recent debate in mandatory training that I see is about the pros and cons of offline and online. I meet fierce advocates of each, though in reality, from what I've seen, I think there should be a mix of both offline and online learning, what the education sector calls blended learning. This is a universal problem in the sector, and so something that I follow very closely. We've looked at a variety of methods and a variety of providers. Firstly, the reduction in senior staff, especially nurses in workplaces. There are less experienced operators to conduct the training. So the reality of it, outsourcing, either offline or online, is becoming necessary for many providers. Though online is certainly not perfect, and I don't think offline is either, the pure economics let alone some of the amazing technology that is coming out year on year on. I think that an outsourced online training provider is the future for most aged and community care providers. I haven't forgotten about blended training. I'll get back to that. All of the online trainers have the same basic setup until now. They have a technology platform called an LMS, Learning Management System, into which they load content. The LMS is the platform that holds the content, allowing you to choose which subjects for which staff groups, allows each user to log in and tracks them as they proceed through each subject, and finally allows you as their manager to run a report. As I said, the content is the actual subjects. The challenge is you don't want to use just one provider's content. You want a couple of subjects from Learning Seed, you want a couple from Elmo and E3, a few from the Aged Care channel, as well as the other training providers. Then you want to be able to access the amazing free courses out there. The MOOCs, massive open online course, such as the well-known University of Tasmania's Dementia Program. The problem is, none of these providers want to share until now. So hack number 2 is a company called Quintal. Quintal was your standard LMS and content training provider. They saw the above challenges and the users' desires and decided to change their model. Their LMS their new LMS only came out late last year, so it is cutting edge compared to some other providers. But that's actually not the difference that made us fans of their system. It is an amazing system. It also includes setting up offline training rooms with maximum numbers. So when you say we're having a training for 15 people in training room A, you can actually put that through Quintal. Staff can book into it, and it'll close it off when the classroom is full. Quintal provide 2 additional functions I believe are unique compared to their competitors. Firstly, they built a learning and development marketplace. So instead of just having purely Quintal subjects, when you use the Quintal system, they access content subjects from a wide variety of other training providers. And the marketplace is constantly growing every day. I know some training providers that are actually dumping their own LMS platforms and then moving their content into Quintal's platform, because they actually are not in the technology business, they're in the training business. So if they can just create the good content and it's hosted by Quintal, it actually helps them. But what does this mean for you? Well, it solves the whole boring content from one provider problem. In the one system, you can access a wide variety of content. So you can choose subjects from major provider A, 3 subjects from major provider B, 2 subjects from Quintal, 2 free MOOCs from universities, and an amazing course delivered by a standalone subject matter expert that could never afford their own LMS until now. And that wide mix can be your 10 subjects for this year. Next year you can change it. The second major difference Quintal made was in making membership of their LMS free for individuals. Therefore, any worker who completes subjects in Quintal's system keeps a copy of what they have completed in their L&D wallet. Therefore, if they move from one employer to another, they don't lose their entire mandatory training record. Their new employer can see what they have already completed, down to actually logging in and seeing the actual content and Q&A in the subject. And therefore, as a manager, you can choose to accept that or make them complete that subject again. But it gives you that choice, something you don't have now. It also allows proactive workers to demonstrate their proactiveness by completing more subjects than are required by their employer. Many of the subjects in Quintal's marketplace are either free, like the MOOCs, or low cost. Easy to access for a worker with an interest in upskilling themselves. I mean, seriously, how much assistance would it be to have such visible indicators of proactive staff in your workplace when you're looking for a team leader or someone to promote? Now, circling back to the start, many of Quintal's subjects do come as blended content. Therefore, the information that can be read watched in videos, etc., is online, plus the main Q&A aspect of each subject. But if the subject naturally should have an offline component, such as manual handling being a great example, it comes with offline notes for an in-house instructor to demonstrate and test the staff with. And if you don't have an in-house instructor available, Quint will have a database of such trainers Australia-wide who can come and support you. Sounds pretty good to me. And I've met a number of clients who feel the same. Are there any questions on Quintal? Okay, so we'll move on to police checks. You think it's a simple subject, but it's not. According to the Act, each one must provide a police check every 3 years. There are no further rules that say each provider must conduct their own police check, and one's paid by another provider and not allowed in provider B. There's nothing like that. Yet I still meet many workers who have to buy 3 police checks each time because they have 3 employers. That does not help with staff morale. Hi Ling, I've seen your question regarding Quintal. I'll get to it at the end. The other really relevant point when discussing police checks is automation. They are one of a series of common documents and processes, especially under workforce management, that can be automated. I'll get more to that later. As with almost everything in aged care, there are a wide variety of providers of police checks and how they get done. Some providers pay for their staff, whereas others make the staff pay. Some accept police checks completed off the staff's own bat or at another employer, whereas others will not. Some providers use a completely manual service, posting or faxing a paper form back to the AFP in Canberra and waiting for the mail. Some police check providers have a downloadable form off their website, and some have a completely online application, including the 100 points of ID check being done using a smartphone camera. What I'm saying is that there are a wide range of methods being used, and about the only consistent thing is that they're all about the same price. Oh, I've jumped ahead. ACN's aim is to find the best method, and we seek partners who use technology to improve their product, not just for technology's sake. Partners who understand that their service is part of a larger workforce management need and therefore want to work with others, not have to run solo. And that's what we found with CVCheck. First off, their processes are 100% online. For both an individual completing their own check or for an employer organising checks for all of their staff, no more manual process. No more losing the police check letter in the post. Secondly, as the CVCheck system is online, the person that the police check is about has an online verified copy held by CVCheck. Therefore, each time they get a new police check, either off their own bat or for an employer, it goes into that account that they get held at CVCheck. So they can send that as a verified copy to each of their employers. And if they're automated, they can actually upload all the personal records straight from there as well, all from doing one police check. Thirdly, as I touched on now, also because it is online, the upload process of CVCheck police checks fits into many common HR platforms. So at a basic level, you can import the police check when the worker completes it, all the way through to automating the whole process from application through to the upload of the new version into your personnel records. As I said at the start, there are many providers of functionality these days. That's no longer the challenge to the degree it used to be. Now it's about connectivity. Similar to Quintal and CVCheck, there are other providers of mandatory training and police checks, but they don't connect to anything. They don't export the data. It's just another platform that you have to log into. We don't know any other providers like CVCheck and Quintal that connect so many third-party services sharing information. Is there any questions on CVCheck? Raymond, I've seen your newly question. I'll get to that at the end as well. Okay, Now we finished the three hacks that we always use. Now there's a fourth service that we've put in place to actually leverage all of this technology. It's called ACDN's Profile platform. We call it the secret sauce, the technology behind the ACDN marketplace and all of ACDN services. Similar to Quintal's desire to provide a single learning and development passport for workers to carry with them across the sector, ACDN wanted to provide an accreditation system for the sector that tracked each person for their key information, contact details, compliance aspects, education history, and employment experience. Each worker needs to track all their details and reproduce them constantly with job applications, personnel records, updating personnel records whenever they alter anything, and providers need to track all this information